Welcome to the Shorten Anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of The Great Ruler. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. The Great Ruler Season 1, Episode 17. The following day. The camp once again became lively. Many boys and girls surrounded each other excitedly as they talked about their harvests of yesterday. Sounds of laughter from the girls echoed in the camp. It was filled with youthful vitality. The people from the Liu territory, led by Liu Ming, had temporarily left in the early morning. They probably went to search for traces of Xue Tu. Without the existence of these individuals, the camp's atmosphere relaxed. After all, these boys and girls had some resistance towards these ominous individuals. Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi did not stop the training because of Xue Tu. However, they reminded the students to not venture in too deep and to not be too dispersed. Let's go. We should also set off. Mu Chen gestured towards Tang Xianer, and she trotted over. The curvy, slender, petite body attracted many boys' gazes, and they stared jealously towards Mu Chen. This guy was really lucky since he was able to form a team with Tang Xianer. Brother Mu, are you going out for training again? Ha ha ha. Don't lose to us. Zhang Li and Teng Yong greeted Mu Chen when they noticed him. You want to defeat us as well, Dream On, Tang Xianer said in a sweet voice. Ha ha ha. If anything happens, feel free to call us, Brother Mu. If anyone wants to trouble you, we're not afraid of them. Zhang Li and Teng Yong laughed as they talked. Beside them, the East Branch students that had accompanied Mu Chen yesterday to perform the task hurriedly nodded. Mu Chen waved at them with a smile. Without saying anything more, he brought Tang Xianer away from the camp and headed to the northern spiritual field. Within the camp, Liu Mubai stared at the disappearing figure. A hint of coldness that was hard to detect flashed through his eyes. Boom! Within the forest, Mu Chen's hand shot off as dark black spiritual energy surged out from his palms. He darted past a low-rank spiritual beast whose strength was at the spiritual movement stage middle phase and directly knocked it a dozen meters away. The spiritual beast could only whine as it landed on the ground. Behind him, Tang Xianer watched this scene and was startled. Although Mu Chen could kill a low-rank spiritual beast with this level of strength yesterday, he could not kill it using such a brutal method like he showed today. Your strength? Tang Xianer could not help but ask. Thanks to the jaded essence fruit, I managed to break through to the spiritual movement stage late phase yesterday night. Mu Chen crouched down and obtained the spiritual beast's soul essence as he explained. Crazy. When Tang Xianer heard this, she suddenly muttered this cry. However, she immediately lifted her face and proudly said, I will also reach the spiritual movement stage late phase within 5 days. Amazing. Mu Chen smiled and raised his thumb. Then he continued heading to the depths of the forest. Let's go. It's your turn next. You're not allowed to be lazy. Otherwise, it won't be beneficial to your training. I know, Tang Xianer replied as she quickly followed him, while she smiled. At the west side of the northern spiritual field, a dozen shadows were searching vigilantly. Liu Mubai was also within this group. With his position and strength, it was obvious that he was capable to lead a team by himself. From Liu Ming, he understood just how important the item that Xue Tu had stolen was to the Liu territory. The Liu territory had paid a great price in order to obtain it. Therefore, they must capture Xue Tu and obtain the item back regardless of the cost. Little Master, we detected traces of that Xue Tu earlier. However, that guy is extremely cunning. He slipped away from our team again. An expert from the Liu territory reported to Liu Mubai. Continue to search. Liu Mubai nodded his head and said a command. Yes! That team immediately replied and brought its men to increase the search radius. This search lasted for half an hour. Just when Liu Mubai frowned, a buzzing sound rang out in front. It was a signal sent out by the Liu territory's men. They found him. Let's go. Liu Mubai's eye lit up. He gestured with his hand and his body charged forward. When his body passed through the forest, a man covered with blood rushed towards him awkwardly. From his appearance, it seems that he was a person from the Liu territory. Where's Xue Tu? Liu Mubai hurried and asked as he stared at that person. Little Master, Xue Tu fled towards the north. Should we immediately notify the third master? The expert from the Liu territory replied. The north? Liu Mubai's eyes flashed when he heard this. He waved his hands and said, Wait for a moment. Big brother? Why should we wait? Liu Yang asked as he was puzzled. If they waited, what would they do if Xue Tu escaped? He can't escape. We already forced Xue Tu into a dead end. Liu Mubai smiled dainty and said, "Right now, he is only a caged beast. He will die eventually. However, we should let him vent off his frustration on some unlucky fellows before we let him die." "Big brother, you mean?" Liu Yang was confused. "Mu Chen is in that direction." Liu Mubai laughed softly. "Oh?" When Liu Yang heard this, a hint of excitement flashed through his eyes. However, he immediately frowned again and said, "We can't guarantee that Xue Tu would attack Mu Chen. Xue Tu is fond of girls. Since a beauty like Tang Qian'er is beside Mu Chen, he wouldn't be able to endure it. With Mu Chen's personality, he would not throw aside Tang Qian'er and escape by himself, so..." Liu Mubai smiled, but this smile was filled with a cold chill. "Haha, Big Brother sure is thoughtful. If Mu Chen dies at the hands of Xue Tu, others can't complain at all, and can only consider him as unlucky," Liu Yang said excitedly. He knew how vicious that Xue Tu is. If Mu Chen fell into his hands, he would definitely die. Liu Mubai only smiled and muttered as he stared at the north. "I originally planned on taking care of him by myself, but it seems that he is fortunate enough. Oi, Mu Chen, hurry and help. This guy's strength is at the spiritual movement stage late phase. I can't win." Within the forest, Tang Qian'er hurriedly avoided a ferocious spiritual beast, which lunged towards her. Her black ponytail danced as she let out a cry from time to time. Standing on a branch, Mu Chen stared at the figure below, who was constantly dodging the spiritual movement stage late phase spiritual beast. He could not help but smile as he swept down like a wild goose. His right hand formed a fist as a dark black light condensed itself within his palm and formed a black light seal. "Stop being so savage, you beast!" Mu Chen dashed out while revealing a slight smile. The black light seal carried a tremendous fluctuation as it fiercely bombarded the spiritual beast. Boom! The spiritual beast let out an angry roar, and its huge claws filled itself with spiritual energy. It violently smashed it against Mu Chen's fist. The spiritual energy impact exploded and swept the surrounding leaves away. A low growl came out from the spiritual beast as it was actually pushed back by Mu Chen forcibly. Shwa! When the spiritual beast was still unstable, Mu Chen's body moved and he darted toward the spiritual beast again. His hand flashed and a dagger appeared within it. The spiritual energy wrapped around the dagger and brought forth an extremely sharp light as it stabbed fiercely into the spiritual beast's throat. Dong! Hot blood squirted out from the spiritual beast. Even the earth trembled slightly when the spiritual beast crashed onto the ground. Mu Chen smiled as he wiped the blood away from his dagger. The boy's tall body was quite attractive as it was bathed by the warm sunlight that penetrated through the forest. "What an irritating guy. He doesn't know how to be kind to woman and let me be chased for so long," Tang Qian'er said bitterly before she walked towards the spiritual beast. She pulled out a short sword and stabbed it into the beast's head. While she tried to take out the spiritual beast's soul essence, she was still chattering about Mu Chen's crimes. Mu Chen stared at her and could not help but smile. But just when he wanted to say something, his face changed and he darted forward. He wrapped his arms around Tang Qian'er's waist as she was about to take out the spiritual beast's soul essence. The two of them tumbled away, and just when Mu Chen grabbed onto Tang Qian'er and charged away, a bloody shadow charged out suddenly from the forest. The hands that were originally planning to hold on to Tang Qian'er missed, and it let out a surprise sound. Mu Chen held on to Tang Qian'er as they rolled on the ground. Then he quickly got up and stared in alert at the figure that appeared. His eyes narrowed slightly. Seeing the corpse of the spiritual beast in the open space, the figure stood up. He was wearing a blood-red robe, and his face was extremely vicious. Craftiness flashed within his narrow eyes. "Haha, that boy actually has quite the skill." The blood shadow stared at Mu Chen and let out a strange laugh. Then his eyes landed on the girl who was behind Mu Chen. The girl had a soft, slender body. Her chest was quite bountiful, and she had a waist that could be held within one arm. The youthful and energetic taste of hers made him lick his mouth. "I never expected to find such an outstanding item over here." The blood shadow smiled and said. The eyes that stared at Tang Qian'er made it seem that he wanted to swallow her into his stomach. This made the young girl tremble, and she hid her body behind Mu Chen. "Boy, hand her over to me and I'll let you go. Otherwise, I'll let you experience some of my methods." The blood shadow smiled and he stared at Mu Chen like a viper. Mu Chen kept a close eye at the blood shadow in front of him. Cold sweat appeared on the palm that held onto Tang Qian'er's hand. If he did not guess incorrectly, the guy in front of him must be the captain of the blood slaughter group. Xue Tu, whom Liu Ming and the others were chasing. He never thought that he would meet with this murderer here. This time, he really was in trouble. In the open space of the forest, the three figures faced each other. The atmosphere made one feel slightly suffocated. Of course, this was only to Tang Qian'er, who was behind Mu Chen. Xue Tu's smile and narrow eyes were filled with craftiness and coldness. Mu Chen vigilantly stared at him, while the spiritual energy within his body rushed out. This Xue Tu seemed to give him a dangerous feeling. The degree of danger seemed to be far beyond the conflagration ape king that he met yesterday. Whether it is in strength or in wisdom, the conflagration ape king cannot compare with Xue Tu. The conflagration ape king had only just broke through to the spiritual rotation stage late phase, but Xue Tu, on the other hand, had almost stepped into the spirit stage. Boy, I don't have much time to play this game of confrontation with you. You have 10 seconds to decide. If you hand her over, I'll let you live. Xue Tu said this again as he stared at Mu Chen with a smile. You aren't afraid of attracting the 2 spirit stage instructors from the Northern Spiritual Academy if you attack us here? Mu Chen said slowly. You're running out of time. Xue Tu grinned, and his pure white teeth made the other people shudder. Mu Chen took a deep breath and tilted his head to stare at Tang Qian'er. Then he grabbed onto her smooth wrist and shoved her over towards Xue Tu. At least you understand, boy. When Xue Tu noticed this, his smile became more brilliant. Mu Chen furiously circulated the spiritual energy in his arms and immediately took a step forward. He directly used the back of his hand and smashed towards Tang Qian'er's shoulder. This powerful impact blew her away. If you don't want to hurt me, then leave. After Tang Qian'er was blown away, Mu Chen's shout quickly followed. When Tang Qian'er fell into the forest, her beautiful eyes stared at the tall boy's figure, and her eyes became wet by the fog. She suppressed her foolish thought of not casting him aside as she turned and ran. You think you can get away? Xue Tu stared coldly at this scene. These 2 spiritual movement stage brats actually were so naive that they thought they could escape him. Boy, I'll let you taste what is called a living death later on. Xue Tu smiled and his body darted over. However, he did not charge towards Mu Chen, but rather to Tang Qian'er, who was escaping to the outside of the forest. When Mu Chen noticed this, he also lunged over. However, Xue Tu completely ignored his lunge. Spirit Destruction Bead! Just when he planned on ignoring Mu Chen's charge, Xue Tu noticed that the boy suddenly grasped something within his hand. A light seemed to appear within his hand and a violent sound rang out. Spirit Destruction Bead? Hearing this name, Xue Tu's heart trembled. Although Mu Chen, who was in front of him, was pretty weak, it was definitely possible that he could obstruct him if he had a Spirit Destruction Bead. Moreover, if the Spirit Destruction Bead was to hit him, it would probably cause some degree of injury. This was something that Xue Tu could not afford to suffer while he was surrounded. Xue Tu's eyes flashed and eventually stopped. He stared at the powerful and sudden mass of black light and let out a cry as vigorous spiritual energy erupted out and enveloped his body. Crack! The instant that the black light was about to touch his body, it suddenly burst open. Unexpectedly, the violent spiritual energy did not appear. Instead, a strong stench suddenly presented itself. A sticky item burst out from the black light and covered Xue Tu's body. This sudden turn of events completely stunned Xue Tu. He lowered his head and stared at his body covered with blood. The fresh blood was quite viscous and had a pungent smell. It completely bathed his body and made him look extremely awkward. You dare trick me? The corner of Xue Tu's mouth twitched slightly. A chill exploded out from his eyes as he stared at Mu Chen. However, Mu Chen ignored him and instantly retreated. Boy, since you want to let her get away this much, then I won't let that wish of yours happen. Although Xue Tu was extremely angry due to Mu Chen's act, he was still a sinister and ruthless individual. He immediately let out an eerie laugh. Trash! Do you want this thing? When Mu Chen noticed that he actually refrained his anger and wanted to capture Tang Qian'er, he smiled instead. Then he pulled out an emerald round fruit that emitted a rich spiritual energy from his arm. Jaded essence fruit? When Xue Tu noticed this jaded essence fruit, his eyes narrowed. Greediness appeared within his eyes. He was currently at the peak of the spiritual rotation stage and was only a step away from advancing to the spirit stage. If he was able to obtain the jaded essence fruit, he would be able to take a risk. Furthermore, if he really succeeded in his breakthrough, he would be able to successfully get rid of Liu Ming and escape. He would be able to break out of this dilemma. You're a really surprising boy. Now I have some interest in you. Xue Tu grinned. His eyes instantly turned cold and turned his body over. He darted furiously towards Mu Chen. Compared to letting go of a beauty temporarily, it was worth it if he manages to break through to the spirit stage. Mu Chen seemed to have expected this reaction from him. Within his body, the spiritual energy gushed out and wrapped around his legs. He seemed to have pushed his speed to the limits as he fled in madness towards the depth of the forest. With Tang Xian'er's speed, it would probably take some time before she would manage to notify Teacher Mo. During this time period, he must ensure that he survives against Xue Tu, who is at the peak of the spiritual rotation stage late phase. With Xue Tu's strength, it was extremely easy to kill him. Boy, you really believe that you can escape? You would actually use your own life to lure me over for just a little girl. Oh ho ho, to be honest, I respect you quite a bit. How about this? If you were to hand the jaded essence fruit over, I would only break your limbs and let you survive. What do you think? Xue Tu chased after the desperately escaping figure. A strange cackle sound rang out constantly. Plaything of a homeless cur, you should take care of yourself instead. Mu Chen did not look back and instead sneered at him. You really don't know how to appreciate other people's favors. Xue Tu's eyes turned cold. His spiritual energy stormed out and his speed suddenly accelerated. The distance between Mu Chen's figure and him was quickly shortening. Mu Chen could feel the chill coming closer and closer behind him. His heart sank slightly. In the end, he still underestimated Xue Tu's strength. However, if he were to relax even the slightest bit, he would probably die at the hands of this guy. Mu Chen gritted his teeth and a low roar seemed to erupt within his heart. His spiritual energy circulated at a high speed through his meridians. Perhaps they were aware that Mu Chen was in a situation of life and death. The hidden lights within the depths of his body slowly lit up again. The lights emerged one after another. If Mu Chen were to observe the inside of his body with his mind right now, he would discover that the lights were connecting and forming something similar to a mysterious tower. Boom. Unfortunately, Mu Chen did not have the time to split up his mind right now. He could only feel the spiritual energy suddenly become a lot violent, and his speed also accelerated. He was actually able to pull a little bit of distance away from Xue Tu. What? This boy's speed is actually this fast. When Xue Tu noticed this, he was stunned. Then he frowned again and immediately circulated his spiritual energy as he hurriedly chased after Mu Chen. After all, he had extraordinary eyesight that surpassed others. Mu Chen's sudden explosiveness should only be temporarily and could not compare to his endurance. Within the forest, one of them was chasing, while the other was fleeing. As they passed through, the leaves on the ground were swept clean as if a tornado had passed. Under this extreme speed, Mu Chen and Xue Tu quickly reached the depths of the northern spiritual field. Xue Tu looked in this direction and was slightly impatient. After all, there were quite a bit of tricky spiritual beasts at this place, and it was easy for the situation to change. Boy, I had enough of you. Xue Tu fiercely gritted his teeth. He did not care if he had to expend a lot of spiritual energy. His feet violently stomped the ground and his body suddenly laid down like a cheetah. His palms smashed onto the ground, and the spiritual energy that wrapped his body seemed to have turned into the shape of a cheetah. His body instantly turned into a light figure, and he stormed towards Mu Chen at an extremely surprising speed. Go to hell! This sudden burst of speed made Xue Tu appear behind Mu Chen in around 10 breeze of time. A violent spiritual energy fluctuation was on Xue Tu's fist as it was fired out. This attack was enough to instantly kill a person at the spiritual movement stage. At the same time, Mu Chen felt a surprising attack behind him. He would probably suffer grave injuries if he were to take it head-on. Mu Chen's eyes flashed crazily. He stared at the depths of the forest as if he was calculating his position. Then he turned his body violently around and opened his palm. A black light emerged and he noticed a mysterious black paper suddenly appear from within it. Boom! After that mysterious black paper appeared in Mu Chen's palm, Xue Tu's fierce fist smashed heavily onto the black paper. Dong! A violent spiritual energy exploded outwards. Mu Chen's body seemed to be struck by lightning and fresh blood sprayed out from his mouth. That page of black paper returned back to his body and his body flew backwards. In the end, he fell into the depths of the forest. Xue Tu was surprised when he noticed that this fist didn't kill Mu Chen. However, his speed wasn't slow. He charged straight into the forest and stared at Mu Chen coldly as Mu Chen lay underneath a large tree. Are you going to continue to run? Xue Tu stared cruelly at Mu Chen as he was collapsed on the ground and laughed. There's no need. However, Mu Chen wiped off the blood from the corner of his lips when facing Xue Tu's merciless smile. Instead, a mocking smile appeared on the boy's handsome face. Now it's your turn to escape, trash." When Xue Tu heard this, his pupil retracted. As he was about to speak, a furious howl burst out from the depths of the forest. A silver light charged out like lightning. This extremely violent spiritual energy seemed to directly cause a storm within the forest. A silver-horned panther dragon? When Xue Tu saw this majestic spiritual beast, his face instantly changed. He stared ferociously at Mu Chen and said, "What a ruthless boy. You plan on dying together with me? However, you're still too inexperienced. As long as I escape from his territory, the spiritual beast will not chase after me. Instead, you will be the one that becomes his food." After Mu Chen heard his words, the mocking smile became even more intense. "Your body is covered with the blood of his cub. You think that it would let you escape this easily?" When he heard this remark, Xue Tu hurriedly looked down at the sticky and fresh blood covering his body. His face changed dramatically. He finally understood that this seemingly innocent boy was actually setting up a trap for him since the very beginning, pretending to throw out a spirit destruction bead, yet hiding a bottle of fresh blood instead. He was escaping while planning along the way. As Xue Tu stared at the boy's mocking look, his heart shuddered. Was this really something that a reckless young boy would do? Mu Chen stared at Xue Tu, whose face was changing color. He gently smiled and stared at the silver-horned panther dragon, who was letting out an immense killing intent. He let out a sigh of relief. "Boss Panther Dragon, I'm relying on you again this time. Please block this for me." That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.